Good Shabbos again, everyone. So a few weeks ago, my daughter, who's a senior in high school, asked if I would bring her to a Texan game. It wasn't to see a victory. Rather, it was to bring back some good memories of the years in which I would often bring her and my other children to football games. So we decided we would go. But my daughter always insisted on wearing a jersey of one of the players on the Texans. Right now, the only jersey she had was Deshaun Watson's jersey. She wasn't going to wear that jersey. So she asked me, which jersey should I get? Dad, I want to get the jersey of the best player on the team. I had no idea which player is now considered the best one on the team. There aren't many good players to choose. For the few players who may be considered the best on the current 2021 Houston Texans, on the one hand, we have so many bad players. To be the best player on the Texans is not saying much. But on the other hand, you could look at it, given the inept ownership, the fact that any player is halfway decent, it's impressive that any player can still play some good football. Now, believe it or not, the same idea can be found in the very first line of our Torah portion this week. And that's Parshat Noach. And you're familiar with this Parsha. This is the man chosen by God to build the ark. Him and his family, along with, of course, many of the animals, will be the only living creatures that will survive the flood that God is about to bring. In the very first verse of the Torah this portion says, Noach ish Sadiq, Tamim haya b'doratav. Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Why are the words "in his age" added? Couldn't have just said Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless. And that's why God chose him. But the Torah adds the words b'doratav, in his age, in his generation. And so, as good rabbis often do, the rabbis debate, why does the Torah add these words? Is this a true compliment or is it qualified praise? Just like our discussion about the Texans, one rabbi named Yochanan says, compared to those he was around, he was very righteous. This was the generation that was so evil, so corrupt, so full of violence that God decides he must destroy all living human beings and almost all creatures. But if he lived Noah in a more respectable age, maybe Noah wouldn't have been so special, no better than average. But another rabbi, a guy named Reish Lakish, he felt differently. He felt society was so bad during that time, it's a testimony to Noah that he was good at all. It wasn't easy to be good. If he had lived in a generation of virtuous people or in more normal times, he would have been even more righteous with so many good examples around him. Anyone, according to this rabbi, who had the moral backbone to be a good person in an immoral society would have been an even better person in a generation that encouraged goodness. Yochanan and Reish Lakish based their opinions on their worldviews. Yochanan emphasizes the power of society to shape the behavior of its members. Reish Lakish, he champions the power of the individual to withstand the pressures of society. And here's the interesting part. Reish Lakish, who becomes one of the greatest rabbis of the Talmud, before becoming a rabbi, is a well-known thief. That's right. Before he became a rabbi, he was known as one of the most cunning and daring outlaws of the time. In fact, Yochanan here, who disagrees with him, gets Reish Lakish to become a rabbi by promising him his beautiful sister in marriage if he gives up his life of crime for a life of Torah. And Yochanan's plan works. In fact, it works so well, Yochanan and Reish Lakish not only become brother-in-laws, they become best friends and full-time study partners. They were known to spend many days and nights in the heartfelt debate and discussion in the great Beit Midrash, the great house of study. A rabbi from birth encouraging a thief from birth to become a rabbi who later becomes his best friend and study partner. Sounds like the next Hollywood blockbuster. Thinking about their own respective backgrounds and life experiences, it makes sense that each rabbi has a different perspective on Noah. Yochanan has experienced firsthand the power of society to shape the behavior of its members. He has now seen how a new family, new surroundings, and a life of Judaism has turned an infamous thief into a famous rabbi. Reish Lakish has experienced firsthand the power of an individual to withstand the pressures of society. He has grown up amongst a rough crowd. He was conditioned to live a life of crime. Yet he was able to overcome the challenges of his earlier life and become an esteemed rabbi by surrounding himself with more respectable individuals. Each rabbi offers, I believe, several lessons for us all. I want to share 3. Number 1, Yochanan reminds us perhaps the best way to help someone who is struggling, someone who could live a better life, is to simply offer friendship, making them feel part of a friend group, making them feel part of a community, making them feel part of a family can go a long way in truly helping someone. Is there a neighbor, maybe a distant cousin, someone in your office who could use a friend, who could use your wisdom and care? Are you doing enough to help those in your life who could use your guidance and support? Because a hand up is always more powerful than a hand out. Years ago, a member told me about an experience he had at work. At a luncheon, he noticed a fellow colleague who was sitting alone. And this was often the case. This colleague had several personal challenges, and people often shied away. So this congregant decided to sit with this man. And they ended up having a nice conversation. And over time, they became friendly and maintained a pleasant office friendship. Years later, the lonely colleague told him how much that friendship meant to him. The fact that he had sat with him, spoken with him, and become his friend filled him with joy. The friendship also helped him overcome some of his personal challenges. Our member never knew that sitting with someone at lunch could make such an impact. You never know the influence you can have on someone by simply being open-minded, friendly, and considerate. Number 2, the Rabbi Reish Lakish reminds us, no matter the challenges you have faced, never give up hope that you can overcome them. You can change your life's direction by just associating yourself with people who can help. There are people out there who can offer you the assistance, support, and advice you may need. Your clergy are there for you. And fellow members of the Beth Yeshurun family are also there for you. Coming to shul, being around others, being part of a community of people can go a long way to changing how each of us lives, can give us the role models we may need to change the direction in which we're headed. Earlier this week, I spoke with a new member, a woman who just joined our congregation. She told me that she just moved to this area of Houston. And before joining Beth Yeshurun, she had visited almost every synagogue in town. But she decided to join here because, as she told me, when she walked into Beth Yeshurun, people were warm and welcoming. People went up and introduced themselves. They asked how she was. They asked how they could help. They got to know her. And that made me so proud. A Jewish life has been changed for the better. And number 3, a lesson for the young people that are here today. It's not don't become a thief, and it's not don't become a Texan fan unless you want to live a life of disappointment and misery. You know these things. The third lesson is choose wisely who you associate yourself with. As I mentioned earlier, my daughter is a senior and is busy working on her college applications. Our house is a whirlwind right now. This weekend, she's making her 4th college visit in 3 weeks. And all we seem to be debating and talking about is where she'll apply, getting the applications done, getting her recs in, and all of the fun that's involved in sending our children to college. And it got me thinking, do you know how many children in the world actually have the blessing to attend and graduate from college? How many do you think? I looked it up. It's less than 7% of the people in the world will have the blessing of attending college and graduating. Our children are indeed very blessed, because almost all of the children of this community, of this congregation, it's an expectation. It's something we take pride in. Education is something that we as Jews have always taken seriously, and we continue to do so, as our children often make us so proud by going to college and becoming the adults we want them to become. But it's a reminder that all it takes, God forbid, is one mistake to ruin that incredible blessing that so many young in our community will have. It's a blessing just to go to college when 93% of the people in the world never will. So the lesson is, choose wisely who you'll spend your time with during your middle school and high school years. Choose wisely, because it can make all the difference. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And now let us continue in our